Okay, Father, as we come this day, I just want to open up in prayer. Abba, Father, as we come into this day and as we are once again gathered together so that we may be able to continue our lesson on what does it mean to return back to the Garden of Eden. Abba, I just want to thank you that truly we will understand your hearts in the time that we're living in, because it's like what you're saying in this hour, behold, I do a new thing. Behold, I do a new thing. Can you not perceive it? Can you not see it? I will make a way in the wilderness where there seems to be no way. And Father, what does this new thing look like? We need to understand what it is that you are trying to teach us in this hour, because truly we are living in a time right now where the world is out of control. This pandemic is getting out of control, where people are saying, oh, it's died down, oh, it's going to finish. Then the next thing we know, in China, a second wave has started, and now it's another strand of swine flu and another strand of a pandemic that's coming. And this is what it says. There will be pestilences and disease, and then there will be rumors of wars, and there will be wars, and these things have to come for the end to be able to come. But Father, we are of this world, but we are not of this world, because we come from a different spirit. And we want to know what it means to be able to return back from the place where we have fallen. And so, Father, I just want to ask you that you will continue to do a deeper work in us, opening up the mind of our understanding, because we do not want to be those that are hearers of the word, but we want to be those that are doers of the word. We don't want to be those that just hear a nice message, as there are messages being preached every day. The YouTube is filled with messages and filled with preaching. And Father, preaching is wonderful, and it can come and it can, make us, encourage us and make us feel better. But Father, this is not about a feel better message that we need. We don't need more feel better messages. We need messages that are going to be able to come, that's going to cut through the core of our being, that's going to be able to come and transform us, so that day by day we can be changed from glory to glory, so that we may become those that may be able to be your representatives upon the earth. Because that's what you wanted. You wanted mankind to be able to subdue the earth and be your representatives upon the earth, to subdue it, to be able to walk on this earth and have authority over the earth. But something has happened where we fell, and where the fallen angels have come and taught us as your people ways already from all those thousands of years ago, to learn things that was not good. But right now, Father, we want to be those that can once again be a sheep that hears your voice, so that a voice of a stranger we will not follow. And we want to be a sheep that will be able to be totally and utterly led by you. We want to be those that can come sit by the quiet, still water, to have the reflection of what heaven wants to show us, so that we may be able to know your way, and we want to walk in it. And so we praise and we thank you, Father. I thank you that I commit this time to you. Will you speak through my lips and speak to my mind the very oracles that will come from your heart, in Yeshua's name. Amen. And so last week we were looking at the story of Cain and Abel, and for us to be able to understand what happened with Cain and Abel, as before we saw what happened with Adam and Eve in the garden where they fell. And then we see they get kicked out of the garden, and now they come into another place. And in this place, this is the place of where now we need to be able to understand. This is now where they're no longer going to be able to eat from the tree of life. And now they're going to have to learn to serve the Father in how the Father wants them to serve Him. So before they were to serve the Father out of a heart filled with love for Him. And He tells them, just don't eat from that tree. And they were there being able to communicate with Him in the cool of the day and dwell in His presence and walk in His presence. And now, as they now fall from that place, they now are going to have to become obedient in how to serve Him. And now it's a different place. And this is why I say the Garden of Eden is like the Holy of Holies. And now they come into this holy place. And then Cain falls even further into this outer court, into the ways of the world. And comes totally into disobedience. And so in this week, the Father has really been speaking to me as the Father's telling me about being able to come back to a place of where we need to come under His hand of protection, and that His hand is over us. And in the last few days, the Father is talking to me about His fire. And He's been talking to me about His fire from the time of Shavuot, that we were to be mikved in His fire. That we were to be mikved in the fire that came at the time of Shavuot. And what is this fire for? And so you see, many times we want the fire, but what we do not understand is the fire that we receive is what kind of fire. Everybody wants a fire to do the miracles, but nobody wants a fire for purging. So it's amazing how many times you find that the body of Messiah wants to pray prayers to now be endowed with power, and they want to walk in the power. But what we do not understand, how do we stand before a holy Yah without being cleansed and being set apart? Because if we are not cleansed and set apart, what does it mean? It means that we are going to be consumed. And so when He stood before Moses in the burning bush, He says, take off your shoes. The ground that you stand on is holy. What did He mean? When we think about take off your shoes because the ground that you're standing on is holy, automatically you think you've got to pay reverence and honor to Him. But what was He saying? Take off your own mindset. Take off your way of thinking. Take off your shoes. Stand with the earth where you come from. From dust you come from, and from dust you shall return. Come back to the dust of where you come from, so that I can speak into your inner man the things that I have to show you. And so it was not just a case of having to take off your shoes because you need to respect me and honor me. And yes, the ground where you're standing on is holy. But if we go deeper and look into what He's saying, take off your shoes because the ground that you stand on is holy. Take off your shoes. Strip yourself from your own intellectual mindset, because He's seeing something that He's never seen before. A bush that's burning that doesn't burn. And a voice that's going to speak to him that's going, what is this? And so I want to read this morning, I want to start off by reading from the Sarah Jubilee Shema. I want to read from page 198 from the Flame of Fire. And I want us to be able to understand that this is what the Father is speaking in the hour that we're in. And you see in Exodus 3 verses 1 to 6, it says, Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the back or west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb of Sinai, the mountain of Yahuwah. The angel of Yahuwah appeared to him in a flame of fire. So who is the angel of Yahuwah? Yahushua himself. So when you see the angel of Yahuwah appearing, who is the angel of Yahuwah? When the Bible talks about the angel of Yahuwah appears, who is that angel of Yahuwah? Who was the angel of Yahuwah that sat with Abraham when he came to speak to him, saying, Sarai is going to become pregnant? Who was that angel of Yahuwah? Who was the angel of Yahuwah spoken of in Exodus chapter 23 verses 21? Let me see if I am talking correct, because sometimes I can speak a verse out of my head, but I always like to make sure that I am speaking correct. Exodus chapter 23, when he says in verses 21, see, verse 20 to 21, see, I'm sending a messenger before you to guard you in the way and to bring you into the place that I have prepared. Who was that messenger? Who's that messenger? It's the angel, which is the messenger, which is Yahushua himself. Who was the captain of the army of hosts in that's spoken of in the book of Joshua, that met Joshua on the way? Who was that messenger? Who was that captain of the army of hosts? Yahushua himself. So you see, when you're able to speak to the Jewish people, and you take a Jewish person who says, yeah, but you people follow the New Testament, and you follow Yahushua that's in the New Testament, he doesn't feature in the Old Testament. Yeah, he's featuring right now. Because who's the messenger of the Yahuwah that is speaking to Moses in the burning bush? Who has that kind of authority? If it's not Abba Yahuwah himself appearing, who is it then? It's Yahushua. And so it says, the angel of Yahuwah appeared to him in the flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burning with fire, yet was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when Yahuwah saw that he turned aside to see, Yahuwah called him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, here I am. Yahuwah said, do not come near, but put your shoes off your feet, for the place on which you stand is holy ground. Also he said, I am Yahuwah your father, the Yahuwah of Abraham, the Yahuwah of Yitzhak, and Yahuwah of Yaakov. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at Yahuwah. So, Yahweh tells him, take off your shoes, because the ground where you stand is holy. But it goes a step deeper. Take off your shoes. Take off your mindset. Come back to the ground. Come back to that holy ground of where you come from when I breathed life into you. I created you out of the dust of the earth. And now listen to what he says. When you walk according to my kingdom principles, you will face my fire. My fire precedes my face. If you do not know my fire, you will not know my face. My presence is in the furnace of my fire. So how do we want to experience Abba Yahuwah's presence in our life without going through a fire? So do you see, we want his blessings, we want his anointing, we want to walk in all the gifts of the Spirit, but we do not want the fire that's got to birth the fruit of the Spirit in our lives. Because it's that fire that's got to come to be able to take us through a place of where we're going to have to submit. The burning bush is a picture of my people. I want my people to be like a burning bush, holy. They need to be set apart. I did not consume the bush with my fire. I also do not consume my people, but I give you a choice. It is your choice whether you are going to take off your self shoes. You see? You're going to take off your self shoes. You're going to take off the shoes of your way, of your doing things, of your mindset, of the way that you do things. You need to take off those shoes and come back to the ground of the dust of where you come from. Because in that place of where we come from is where the Father is able to then speak to us. From dust we have come, and from dust we shall return. And lay down your life to live in obedience, or whether you are going to live for yourself. Without my fire, you are not humble or made holy, made set apart. You need my fire in your life, because it is out of the flame that you will hear my voice. When you enter into the purifying fire, all the other voices will be burnt out. You see, when we start going through that hardship, when we start going through the place of where persecution starts to come into our life, when we start going through the place of where we start to have difficulties that come in our life, that's when we all of a sudden start to seek Father more fervently, isn't it? And then the other voices can become silenced. Because now we are in a hard place. We are in a hard-pressed place. And in that hard-pressed place is where we come to a place of where we say, Father, show me what is there. What is going on in my life? I mean, I know in that time, in 2008, when my car had been repossessed, when my house was about to be repossessed, and we were going through so many things, and I was fasting most of the time. I was just fasting. All the other voices had to be silenced. And then there were many things in my life that was not right. And in that place of where I started to cry out to Him and say, Father, what is going on? And yeah, I'm trying to fight the enemy. And at the end of the day, it wasn't the enemy that I was going to be fighting, but the Father was going to allow me to go through a fire of purification, of purging that was going to go through my life. You see, if my car had not become repossessed, I would never know that I had pride in my life for the car that I drove. You understand? You don't know that's there. Until I was left with a little bantam bakkie. Then I found myself going to a meeting of a Christian business leaders meeting that I was invited to, and parked my car outside because I was embarrassed of the car that I was driving. And I didn't even realize that I was doing this. And when I climbed and then I waited for everybody to leave, and then when everybody left, I walked outside. I didn't park my car in the parking lot of the place. I parked it outside. And when I went and climbed into my car, the father said, "Wow. Why you park your car outside, my child? Why you wait for everybody to leave? And then you climb into your car. Are you embarrassed by the car that you drive?" I said, "No, Abba. Really? Really? Do you have pride in your heart? Really? You don't even have pride?" Oh, there it was in my face, exposed for what it was. But if you had told me that I had pride in the car that I drove, I would say, "You know, I don't." Because I didn't drive no BM. I didn't drive no fancy car. It was just a Renault Scenic. It was just a normal Renault Scenic. So I wasn't the person that had to pride myself in the fact that I've got to drive a fancy, luxurious, expensive car. But yet, in my simple car that I drove, the pride was still there. Because now I was embarrassed in my little bantam bakkie that I would have to start, that I've got to take off in sometimes third gear because the first gear didn't want to work, and sometimes the second gear didn't want to work, and so it was. And I was embarrassed. And that showed that I had pride in my heart. But you see, unless the fire comes, you don't know what is in your heart. Because we, in ourselves, think we are so righteous. We are so okay. We don't really have things that are in there. But you see, the tests and the trials come into our life to show us what is really there. And when we start to pray and we don't get our way, then we really understand that maybe there's an issue there. And we might just have a little issue against the Father. But you see, that's why the fire needs to come, because the fire needs to expose the things that are there. Therefore you will see my face and come to know me for who I am. My fire may be painful and it may be difficult for your flesh, but I will burn pride and the nature of sin out of you, so that you may be holy, so that you may be set apart and humble and live a holy and humble lifestyle. So you see, you don't need, believe me when I say, you might get to a place of where you say, "I'm not prideful in the house that I live." But you know, when you've lived in the triple-story house, which I did, and then came down to the double-story house, and then he humbled me to just a normal house. And now in Israel, I just have an apartment. And it's stripped down, stripped down, stripped down. Now, where my family is concerned, in the way of where people look at you, they say, "Oh, where's the blessing?" Because the blessing is when you now drive the most expensive car. The blessing is when you live in the most expensive house. And mine was the other way around. Mine was strip, 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 strip some more to live a humble lifestyle. Because the day is going to have to come. I'm going to have to leave it all behind, so better I get rid of it quickly. Because, I can't take anything with me. But yet in this life, we don't want a humble life. We have listened to a prosperity gospel that's the more the better. The more I have, the more blessed I am. And there's not a humility. And that is why we are now having to come where He's going to lead us into that Valley of Baca, where He's going to lead us, the church that is going to come into the Hosea chapter 2, where He says, "I'm going to hedge you in. I'm going to hedge you in. The bride is going to be hedged in, and then I'm going to strip you from all your lovers." Let me just quickly read it, because I'm talking about this now and it's just coming to mind. So let me just quickly go read from Hosea. Now, when the Father revealed the bride to me, He revealed the bride from the book of Hosea. And Hosea chapter 2 is where He's very much speaking about the bride. And He says, So you see, look at verse 9. From verse 9. Therefore I shall turn back and shall take my grain in its time, and my new wine in its appointed time. And I shall take away my wool and my linen covering and her nakedness. So he's going to strip us from many things. And now I shall uncover her shame before the eyes of her lovers, and no one shall deliver her from my hand. From Hosea chapter 2, I'm on verse 10. Going to verse 11 now. So you see, he's going to strip us from those things that we have put, all these things that we've put on us. That's why he said to Moses, take off your shoes. Strip yourself of that flesh nature that is there. Remove the things that you've put on yourself. Because remember, in the Garden of Eden, we went and put things on ourselves. And I'm going to remove it. I shall cause her to rejoice. I shall cause all her rejoicing, her festivals, her Christmases, her Easters, her festivals that she has to keep. You know, all the festivals that she wants to keep for herself. I'm going to strip her from those festivals. Her new moons and her Sabbaths, her Sunday churches and her Sabbaths that she wants to keep, and then her festivals that she keeps. I'm going to remove it for her Valentine's Day and her, all these other festivals that we want to keep. Even all her appointed times to cease. So I'm going to bring all of that to an end. And I'm going to bring her to a place. So you see, if you are part of his bride and you are sitting in a church, the only way you're going to finally get to the place of truth, let me tell you something. You don't start seeking for truth, let you start going through some things. When you start going through some things, then you start to seek for truth. I've got my brother right now that has been diagnosed with COVID-19. Do you know, in the 20 years that I've walked with the Father, my brother has never so much as wanted to hear anything about my faith, wanted to know anything about my faith. But let me tell you, last week Saturday, he was so sick that he phoned me asking me to pray for him. And so when the calamity starts to happen out there, believe me when I say to you, people are going to want to know about who your Yah is. They want to know who your Alua is. They want to know about, because you see, he knows my sister, for the last 20 years, she has a relationship. And even now when I spoke to him on Friday, I phoned him just to find out how he was doing. And I said to him, praise the Father. Says, yes, that I can say. Praise him. He is good. Because he's healing his body. Because none of the medication is working. But Abba Yahuwah is faithful. And he will see him through this. And when he comes through this, he's going to have a faith in him. And he's going to turn to him. And that's what Father's going to start doing now. So, at the end of the day, we need to understand. They need to see who's the one whom you serve. But if you've never been through anything in your life, of being stripped through things in your life, how are you going to minister to someone else when they're going to have to lose their house? When they're going to have to lose their car? When the hardships come? But if you've been through a few things in your life, you know how to minister to those people. That's what the fire brings in our lives. And he says, I'm going to strip her. Now listen to what he says. And lay waste her vines and her fig trees, of which she has said, these are my harlot fees that my lovers have given me. And I shall make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. Now listen. I shall punish her for the days of the bowls to which she burnt incense, and adorned herself with her rings and her jewelry, and went after her lovers, and forgot me, declares Yahuwah. So there are many sitting in the church that are sitting with all their things, but the Father is going to start to strip people now. And when he starts to strip them, they're going to start seeking truth. And then he's going to strip them from their Sabbaths, their Christmases, their Easters, and they're going to start reading this Bible, because you see, now when they're not going to church anymore, what are they going to have to resort to? because I'm sure, it says that, especially Gauteng are going to have to, they're starting to put restrictions on them again, which means no more gatherings of 50, only gatherings of 20. So all of a sudden the churches that might have opened, these places that might have opened, are now going to have to start resorting again. So at the end of the day, you returned, but now you're going to have to come back again too. So when the pastor's no longer there, when the church is no longer there, what are you going to pick up then? Your Bible. And when you're going to start reading this Bible, you're going to start seeing truth for yourself that was never there before. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to strip them. Therefore, see, I'm alluring her and shall lead her into the wilderness and shall speak to her heart. And today we're going to look at this heart. I'll speak to her heart, because this heart of hers is filled with the mind, the will, and the emotions. That's not my mind. That's not my will. That's not my way. And that's why he needs to come and speak to our heart. And that is what we're going to see in that which we're going to cover today, is going to have to speak to the heart. And he says, you will face my fire, but those who truly walk with me out of a heart of love will embrace my refining fire that purifies, because they know that if they do not embrace my refining fire, then how can they receive the fire of revival? You see, how do you become a blessing for someone else if you yourself have never been through anything? I want to burn away all the idols in your heart. I want to burn away all the idols in your heart. Did we just read of here? He says, therefore see, Hosea 2 verse 14 says, therefore see, I am alluring her and shall lead her into the wilderness and shall speak to her heart and give to her vineyards from there, and the valley of Acca as a door of expectation. And there she shall respond as in the days of her youth, as in the days when she came up from the land of Mitzrayim. And listen to verse 16. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahuwah, that they shall call me my husband, and no longer call me my Baal, my Lord. My Baal. Baal means Lord. So we shall no longer call him Lord, but we shall call him by his name, because in this place he shall reveal, my name is not Lord, my name is not Baal, my name is Yod Hey Vav Hey Yahuwah. That is my name. She will know my name. And I shall remove, listen, I shall remove the names of the Baals, the Jesus and the Lord and the God from her mouth. From her mouth. And they shall no more be remembered by their names. You see, that's why she needs to come into this place of refining fire. And in that day, I shall make a covenant for them with the beasts of the field, and with the birds of the earth, and with the creeping creatures of the ground, when bow and sword and battle are break from the earth. So this is coming, when the destruction is going to come. And I shall make them lie down in safety. So she shall lie down in safety. And I shall take you as a bride unto me forever. And shall take you as a bride unto me in righteousness and in right ruling and loving commitment and compassion. And I shall take you as a bride unto me in trustworthiness. And you shall know Yahuwah. You shall yada Yahuwah. You shall yada, which is the word yada in the Hebrew language, which means to perceive, recognize, understand, become acquainted with as a husband and a wife in intimacy. Pray for my fire upon the altar of your heart, so that you can truly be a living sacrifice. Ask me to take you through the fire, and even to turn the heat up 7 times, because you know that it will prepare you for what I have in store for you. Without my fire, you cannot be holy. You cannot be set apart. And without holiness, you cannot walk with me. I want to take you deeper. I want to take you higher. But that means less of you and more of me. Nothing of you and everything of me. This is a narrow road. This is what is spoken of in Matthew chapter 7 when it talks about the narrow gate. So let's look at Matthew chapter 7. Matthew chapter 7. Let's look at verses 13. Enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide, broad, and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. My dream of last night. There was a way that had to be gone. You could have swam through the sea underneath it and got to the other side, but that's the broad path. You need to go on the narrow path. You need to go on the bridge that has been provided to get you to the other side. I was woken up out of a dream this morning where I had to get to the other side of this place, but I didn't know how to get to the other side. And there were people saying to me, my son was there, and he said, "Come, Mom, we go through the sea," because it was a sea. And he says, "We just go, we swim, it's to the other side, it's not dangerous, it's calm, the sea's fine." And I said, "No, this is not the way to go." And this other person, I can't remember, it was a woman that was there, and said, "Natalia, come, you can swim to the other side, it's not a problem." And I said, "No." But now you see, the sea is representing that broad way. And I said, "No, I can't go there." I said, "I'm not going." And I waited, and eventually I met someone. And they said to me, "But there's a highway. There's a way. There is a path. There is a road. There's a highway that goes to the other side. Come, we'll go with a car to the other side." So you see, there is a highway. There is a road. But now they wanted to take me on the broad path. And I said, "No, I am not going to go that way." And even though I went to the water and I was tempted, but I said, "No, I'm not going to go. I'm not going that way." And then my son was in the water saying, "Mom, it's not dangerous, it's fine. Look, we can swim. You know how to swim, Mom, come." I said, "No, I'm not going." And I didn't go. And now I just got my answer to my dream. Enter through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. And if I had not waited, I would not have known about that road that was going to get to the other side. There was a bridge, a narrow bridge that took us to the other side, and I was willing to go on that narrow bridge. But I didn't go the broad way. And so you see, we don't want this. We don't want the narrow road. Because this narrow road is hard pressed. And that word hard pressed is part of the thlipsis. It's part of the persecution. It's part of the hardships that you have to go through. We don't want the hardships of life. We want the easy way. We want the path that's easy. And so you see, that sea to me was representing, even though it was simple, you could just swim and you would be right there. And I said, "No, I'm not going. I'm going to wait." And I didn't go. And there was a path, and that was a bridge to get to the other side. And this is the narrow road. Those who walk on it follow the road less traveled, because they love me and spend time to know me. Therefore, the heart of the fire does not scare them, therefore the heat of the fire doesn't scare them, because they know that I desire holiness and purity. So, Father wants set apartness and purity. And so that's why, if we look at what we discussed last week we discussed, and we said that Father was speaking to Cain and saying, "Cain, this is the way I want to be served. And if you had served me the way I was to be served." Remember, Abel came and offered a sacrifice to the Father of the first fruits of his animals. Cain came and offered a sacrifice to the Father. A sacrifice. It wasn't the best. It wasn't his first fruits. So we know we're supposed to offer the Father first fruits. He didn't offer him first fruits. He offered him an offering. And then Cain gets upset because the Father accepts Abel's offering but doesn't accept Cain's. And what does he say to him? If you had done what was right, would you also not be blessed? So if we do what's right in the eyes of the Father, will we too not be blessed? Of course we will. But you see, many times we want those things in our lives, but we don't want to pay a price for anything. And so at the end of the day, he turns around and he says, sin is knocking at your door. His desire is for you. So let's go look at the scripture again in Genesis chapter 4, so that we can just recap on what we did. It says in verse 7, is it not if you do good, you are to be accepted? So if we do good, the Father will accept us. And if you do not do good, towards the door is a sin. So if you don't do what is right in the eyes of the Father, it is sin. He is lying, and towards you is his desire. He is lying, and towards you is his desire. That sin is a person, and that's Hasatan. That is the enemy. And his desire, the enemy's desire, is for you. And you must rule over him. You must rule over Hasatan, who wants to use your flesh to be able to do his work for him. But you have to master over it. And then we looked at 3 John 2 that said, beloved, I pray that you may prosper and that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. Just as your soul prospers. And then we looked at that health, the word for health in the concordance, when we go look at it in that 3 John verse 2. That word health is the mixture of error. One who is uncorrupt in true doctrine has a knowledge of the truth. That's what it means to be in health. To be in health means that you are not corrupted. You have no mixture of error in you, which means you have the true doctrine, which means you have the knowledge of the truth. So if you do not have the knowledge of the truth, you are not in health. And that is why your body comes under much sickness, because you don't walk in truth. Because it's truth that sets you free. The truth of the word sets you free from the demonic spirits that hold you captive into their ways. And so many of us are sick, and it has nothing to do with the sickness itself. It has to do with the mind, the will, and the emotions. Because we're going to look and see, just as your soul prospers. And what is that soul? The soul is the word for nephesh. In the Hebrew, soul is the word nephesh. And if you look at that, it goes back to the root of heart, which is lev, which is the heart. And the heart, when the Bible talks about the heart, it talks about the lev, and the lev is actually talking about the nephesh, which is the soul man, which has to do with the mind, the will, and the emotions. Because the heart is the inner man. It is the mind, the will. It is the soul of man. It is the mind. It is the knowledge. It is the thinking. It is the reflection. It is your will, which is your inclination. It is your resolution. It is determination. It is your conscience. It is your emotions. It is your passions. It is your intellect. That's everything that is when the Bible talks about heart, that's lev. And that comes back to the nephesh of man, which is the soul of man. And the soul is made up of the mind, the will, and the emotions. So understand, if we do not allow the purging of the fire of the Father to come, He cannot expose what is in our hearts, which is what we think, what we feel, and what we do in our will. So if we have the wrong doctrine in our lives, which is the health, which is the mixed seed, then that means we are going to walk in error, which is going to bring sin into our lives, which is going to open us up to destruction. Because then we will become sick in our soul, and when the soul is sick, then what happens to the body? The body becomes sick. So if we have fear in our life, it opens the door to many sicknesses that we take. Many sicknesses come from fear. As a matter of fact, I would say a lot of the sicknesses that we open up ourselves to has to do with fear. Because the very thing that you fear is going to come upon you in the end. And so that is why we need to understand that it all comes back to the heart. It all comes back to the heart. And it says in Proverbs 23, which is what we looked at last week, when it says, do not eat bread of one having an evil eye, nor desires delicacies, for as a man, as he reckons, thinks in his heart, so is he. As he thinks in his heart, so is he. So if the heart, which is the mind, will, and emotions, is wicked and evil, then that's what he will become in the end. And then he will not be in health, because for you to be in health, you need to have the right way of walking in truth with no mixed seed. And that's why we had said, we said, that which you believe in your heart is what you will speak today, which is what you will eventually become, because your thoughts become your words become your actions become your character, and that will eventually become your destiny. And so we look at Luke 6 verses 45 that says, a good man brings forth what is good out of the good treasure of his heart, and a wicked man brings forth what is wicked out of the wicked treasure of his heart. For out of the overflow of the heart, his mouth speaks. 6 verses 45. And so that is why the Father said sin was knocking at his door, because he has the authority to master over that sin. Because what is sin? Sin is transgression of others' Torah. Sin is transgression of others' way. So why did he sin? Because he knew he was to give first fruits. He didn't bring first fruits, and therefore he sinned. And that's now opened the door to the enemy coming. And now, because of that, he becomes jealous of his brother, gets angry with his brother, and kills his brother. So, we're going to look now, today we're going to see that there is a genealogy that we need to look at, and we're going to see a little bit more, we're going to look a little bit deeper into this heart situation, because I need you to understand that it's the heart that is wicked above all things. That the Father sees the heart. And if we do not get our hearts right, in our thinking, in our feeling, and in our will, that's why we've got much calamity in our lives. Because if we do not allow the fire to come into our lives to purge us, so that we crucify the flesh, then hardships come because of the reason being there's things in our lives that the Father needs to deal with. So, if we look at the genealogy, look and see. There was a righteous genealogy. And I'm just going to take you through the righteous genealogy in Genesis chapter 5. It started with Adam. Then remember, Adam had Cain and Abel. Abel was righteous, but now Cain kills Abel. So now there's Cain. Cain goes out of the garden. He goes out of the place where they were with the Father, in offering the Father the way that they were still in a protective place in how Father wants them to be served, which is the way I understand it, like to be a holy set apart place. They were still set apart to the Father. But now what happens to Cain? Cain goes into the place of, if you look at Genesis chapter 4, verses 16, it says, and so Cain went out of the presence of Yahuwah and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden. And that word Nod is the word of a place of unrest, a restless place. So you see, when we are not in the full will of the Father, then where are we? We will be in a place of unrest. And that place of unrest is when it breeds many things of sicknesses in our body. Where does a lot of the high blood pressure come from? Where does a lot of these things come from? It comes from deeper things within us that is there. Where does things like a lot of times breathing problems that we have, asthmas and everything, a lot of those things come from fear. And a lot of these diseases that is upon our bodies has a root that comes from. And that's being in a place of unrest. When we are in a place of unrest, our bodies are susceptible to many things that come upon us. And that is why he says, beloved, I wish above all things that you should prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. Your soul, man, being your mind, your will, and your emotions, your nephesh. But for us to look at the soul, we need to look at the heart, because everything starts in the heart. So here we see a bloodline that starts with Adam, and then Adam eventually has Seth, and then Seth has Enosh, and then Enosh has Canaan, not the Canaan of the other Canaan. He has Canaan, another child. Then he has Mahalalel, then he has Yered, then he has Hanok, then he has Methuselah, and then he has Lamech, and then he has Noah. And then Noah starts a new bloodline. And if you look and see, there's 10 generations. Adam, Seth, Enosh, Canaan, Mahalalel, Yered, Hanok, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. There's 10. 10 is the number of completion. 10 is the number of divine order. So on the 10th generation of Noah, Father starts a new bloodline. But why does Father start a new bloodline? Let's go and look at Genesis chapter 6, and let's see what happens in Genesis chapter 6. So we start reading Genesis chapter 6 from verse 1, and it says, and it came to be when men began to increase on the earth, on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of Eluah saw the daughters of men, that they were good, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. So you see, the sons of Eluah looked upon the daughters of men, that they were good, and they took wives for themselves, and of all whom they chose. Now, I want you to look at the scripture in a dual meaning. There's a dual meaning to this scripture. The one meaning to the scripture is for you to understand that the sons of Eluah, meaning the watchers of the angels of heaven, looked upon the daughters of men and took wives for themselves, and started to interbreed with mortal being with immortal being. But I want you to look at it through another way as well. And the way that I want you to look at it is that the sons of Eluah, meaning the righteous bloodline of the Father, that came down the bloodline, that came from Adam, Seth, Enosh, Mahalalel, Yered, Enoch, Hanok, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah, they started to interbreed with the children of Cain and the unrighteous bloodline of Cain. Because remember, Cain himself, when he was sent out, then he started to have children and started to interbreed. And therefore, his unrighteous bloodline was also on the earth. And I can prove it to you because let's look and see. I'll just read to you here from Genesis chapter 5. Let's look and see. Genesis chapter 5. Let's look and see from verse 10. It says, after he brought forth Canaan, Enosh lived, so the father before was Enosh, lived 815 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So did he only have Canaan? No, he brought forth other sons and daughters. Let's look at Yered. Let's look at verse 12. And Canaan lived 70 years and brought forth Mahalalel. And he brought forth Mahalalel. Canaan lived 840 years and brought forth sons and daughters. Then Jared, verse 16. And after he brought forth Jared, Mahalalel lived 830 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So there's lots of sons and daughters being brought forth, which means that when it comes to Noah, there's a lot of sons and daughters that should have been from a righteous bloodline, isn't it? But now let's look and see Noah now. Now, why is it only Noah on a boat? Because people seem to think Noah was an only child. Noah had brothers and sisters. Noah had other uncles and aunts and cousins that he had family members. Now listen carefully. Genesis chapter 5 verses 29. So let's start at 28. And Lamech lived 182 years and brought forth a son, and called his name Noah, saying, this one doth comfort us concerning our work and the toil of our hands, because of the ground which Yahuwah has cursed. And he brought forth Noah. Lamech lived 595 years and brought forth sons and daughters. So he had other sons and daughters. He didn't only have Noah. He was the firstborn and brought forth sons and daughters. Where are they? On the ark. Did they make it to the ark? Where were the other cousins from the other generations? There would have been cousins, uncles and aunts and cousins. Where were they? Where was all these people that was being multiplied on the earth? From a righteous bloodline that would have known this was the way to serve the Father, because from Adam then would have taught Seth. From Seth, then Seth would have been able to teach Enosh. Enosh would have taught Canaan, and then Mahalalel. But I have read other books of Eden. I've read other books. Not just the book of Enoch. There's other books that tell you about the books of Eden. When I read that book, then I understood, because it was at the bloodline of Jared. At the bloodline of Jared, they were still very set apart. And they were on a high place and they were set apart. But it's interesting. Jared is the 6th generation. At the 6th generation, which is the 6th generation of mankind, all of a sudden, from Jared's generation, they started to interbreed. They looked down at the people of Cain, and they were now making music, because it was at this time when the fallen angels then started coming upon and sleeping with the daughters of men, and they taught them to have these wonderful musical instruments, and they had all this music going, and the women were dancing and all these things that were going on there, and they looked upon this, and now they were drawn to it, and the parents still said, don't go down the mountain. Don't go and interbreed. You don't go. They didn't listen. They went down and they started to interbreed with them. And that is when then the generation then started to go wrong. It was from the bloodline of Jared. And interesting, it's 6 number of man. And it was at Jared's generation. That's why by the time it comes to Enoch, it was so evil that Enoch walked with the Father and he took him. Because it was so evil already at that time. And that's why by the time it comes to Noah, he starts a new bloodline. But Noah's brothers and sisters already had gone astray. You understand? Because otherwise, we don't understand this Bible. Where were all these other righteous people? What happened to them? By the time it comes to Noah, not even Noah's brothers and sisters made the ark. Lamech, Noah's father dies, and he doesn't come onto the ark. But Noah now starts a new bloodline with his 3 children. So now we look and we see. So when I say the sons of Eloah, I'm talking a dual meaning on this verse. It was not just the sons in terms of the fallen angels, but it was the sons in terms of the righteous bloodline. The righteous bloodline that was following down. Because remember, Cain started an unholy bloodline of the people that were disobedient and rebellious, that were killing and doing things their way. And then there was a righteous bloodline of the father, and that's why Noah came from that righteous bloodline. Because what does it say? In Genesis chapter 6 it says, Noah was a righteous man, perfect in his generation. Noah walked with the Lord. So Noah still came from the generation that came down from Adam via Seth, that knew how to walk in the Father's ways. So it says, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. Also, because who were the Nephilim? The Nephilim were the children that were born from the sons of Yahuwah, the watchers, which were the angels that slept with the daughters of men. So that's why I'm saying to you, they were also on the earth. Because remember, the watchers fell, they slept with the daughters of men, and born to the woman were Nephilim, which were the children that came from mortal and immortal beings. And now, look and see. And it says, and the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of Eloah came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. So they were on the earth. So you see, which were these sons? They were, when the sons then came into the daughters of men, the Nephilim were already there, because they were the ones enticing those people. And the sons of Eloah, which were the righteous generation, looked at them and says, wow, they're doing dancing. And they taught them a lot of things. And now the women are enticing the men, and the men are looking, they're saying, wow, we want to be part of this party. And they went down to be part of the party. And this is when they started to fall. And those were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. And Yahuwah saw the wickedness. Now this is important that we see verse 5. And Yahuwah saw the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every inclination of its thoughts of his heart. So you see, the thoughts of the heart. Because the heart is where the mind, the will, and the emotions is. It's the nefesh. The heart is called lev. And in that word lev, it is the soul man, the nefesh, which is our soul man that comes from there. And was only evil continually. So imagine, man's hearts were evil continually. There was nothing good that was coming out of their hearts at all. So their minds, their will, and their emotions was to do only what the body wanted to do, only what their flesh wanted to do. They didn't seek the Father, they didn't serve the Father, they didn't want to know the Father. They were totally taken by their flesh nature. A man totally taken by the flesh nature. And Yahuwah was sorry that he made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. And Yahuwah said, I am going to wipe off man, whom I have created from the face of the ground, both man, beast, creeping creature, birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I made them. Imagine. And is that not where we are today? Because listen, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Which means exactly where man's thoughts, man's heart was only evil continually. Their thoughts of their hearts was evil continually. This is how we are now. If you look at man, you cannot believe that people can do the things that they do? What is life to them that they can just kill someone? What was it to Cain to kill his brother just because he was jealous of his brother? Isn't it today in the land that we live right in now, they will kill you to steal your cell phone? The day is going to come, they're going to kill to steal food. They're going to eat the flesh of human beings because man's thoughts and man's ways are going to be so evil that they're going to resort to just evil things. And so, man became wicked in their thoughts of his heart, and they were wicked continually, and because of that, Father goes and says, I'm going to have to start again. And he chooses Noah and his wife, and Noah's 3 children and their wives, and they enter an ark, 8 people. So behold, I do a new thing. He started a righteous generation. So right now, Father, if he's going to destroy the earth, he's going to need to have a righteous generation of a remnant of mankind to once again start at the time of when we start the millennial reign. Isn't it? So you see, people do not understand why it's so important right now that he can have a righteous generation to start again. Another genealogy that can start again of a righteous generation that's going to do what is right in the eyes of the Father. That's going to be a house of Israel that is an entire house made up of 12 tribes. But these 12 tribes are those that are going to walk in his ways and that are going to have his heart, that will have his thoughts, that will walk in everything that's going to be pleasing to him in everything that they do. So, let's go look at Jeremiah chapter 17. So we're going to just look a little bit more at being able to look at Jeremiah, being able to look at, I'm going to show you, because this is just how the Father showed me. Remember, this is what man was doing, evil in their hearts continually. Then Jeremiah paints the same kind of picture about, again, remember the time of Jeremiah was when even the Israelites that were the Father's chosen people were led into Babylon. They were led into bondage for 70 years. Why? Because they too had become wicked. And so that is why I want to show you Jeremiah, because we are now living like it was again in the days of Jeremiah, where there's very few people, that Jeremiah was like one of very few. I mean, he was actually the only prophet, together with his right-hand man Baruch, that was really trying to speak to the people and telling them that they're going into bondage, that they're going into destruction. So we are now again living in a time of where you've got a bunch of people that think they are. I mean, imagine, I'm sure maybe Noah's brothers and sisters still did some things that was right, but they were part of a mixed seed already, that the Father did not want to come into the ark. And so right now, it is that there are many that think they're righteous before the Father because they go to church, because they do certain things, but yet behind the scenes, they're not living according to his ways, and they don't live according to what is on his heart, and they don't live according to his truths, and they don't live according to what is in his mindset. How does he want us to be able to be set apart? How does he want us to be able to come to a place of where our DNA becomes a DNA that can be set apart by the DNA of Yeshua, which means if we have Yeshua's DNA flowing through our bodies, then we should live as Yeshua lived. Is it not? But yet we are not. So which means we need to go deeper and see what is it that the Father is showing us. And so I want to show you Jeremiah and just show you how the Father in the time of Jeremiah again speaks to his people like he needs to speak to his people now in saying, you are not right. You think you're right, but you are not right. So Jeremiah chapter 17. Let's go look at Jeremiah chapter 17 from verses 5 to 10. So it says, Thus says Yahuwah, cursed is the man. Okay, now that's very important that you see. Cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his arm, and whose heart turns away from Yahuwah. There will be a curse that is going to come upon you if you put your trust in man. And it's important that you understand this, because in the times that we're going to go into, you are going to have to understand. You have to hear from the Father. You have to be led by the Father. You have to trust in the Father. Father is going to bring people together to be there, to encourage one another, to help one another. But who are we to turn to? Abba Yahuwah. And if we're going to turn to man as being the one who's going to help us, to supply us the things that we need, we're going to have a problem. Because the Father is the only one who's wanting us to be able to turn to Him. So He says, cursed is the man who trusts in man and makes flesh his arm, and whose heart turns away from Yahuwah. What is the heart? The heart is the mind, the will, and the emotions. So when your emotions are not where they need to be, you are not to turn to anyone other than to the Father to be able to help you to get that right. Man is there to help you. Man is there to guide you. But only the Father can heal that heart. Who holds the heart in the hand? Who held the Pharaoh's heart in his hand? The heart of the Pharaoh was in the hand of the king, in the hand of the Father himself. Who hardened the Pharaoh's heart? Abba Father himself. So whether we like it or whether we don't, He's still in control. And if we don't maybe like the way things are going, we need to understand He's still in control. And this is where my very test came in this last week when, my husband and Quibus had the car accident, and I said, why, Father? Why? He says, did any harm befall them? But you see, my mind is saying, but that shouldn't have even happened. Because we are wanting to say, well, if the Father is with me, nothing is going to happen to me. We live in a fallen world, and we're going to go through the fire, and we're going to go through things. And if it's all for the glory and the honor of His name, then it's all for the glory and the honor of His name. And if He wants to take you through something so that He can show glory, He can reveal His glory through that, well, then that's why He will do it. And who are you to turn around and say, but I don't want this? And this is why we need to change our mindsets. And we need to expose, Father will expose what's in our hearts. And if He wants to put you through something to be able to test you, to see what's in your heart, then who are you to say He may not do that? Who are you to say He may not do that? So He says, for He shall be like a shrub in the desert and not see when good comes, and shall inhabit the parched places in the wilderness as a salt land that is not inhabited. So you see, if you trust in man, and if you put your trust in the flesh, and if your heart turns away from the Father, you will be like a shrub that will be in the wilderness, and you will not see good when it comes. And that's exactly what happens with people. Have you seen people that have hardened their hearts to the Father? Even the good that comes in their lives, they cannot see any good. They can't see the good. All they do is they moan, they gripe, they complain. They cannot see the good when the good comes. Have you seen a person who all they see is bad? Even the good that's going on in their lives, they can't even thank the Father maybe for the health that they have. They can't even thank the Father for when they've got a plate of food to eat. Because all they think of is what Father didn't do in this area, Let us not be so focused on what Father doesn't do there, but let us thank the Father for everything that He does in our lives. Like I said, every day when I stand in that shower, I thank Him for the hot water that I have. Because the cold water comes before the hot water. So that cold water, I say, Father, thank you that I have water. And then when the hot water comes, and I say, oh, Father, thank you for this hot water. And thank you that right now I've got hot water because I don't know for how long I'm going to have hot water. Maybe one of these days it's only that cold water. And that's why I must embrace that cold water when it comes, because I say, Father, and this is not just here. This has already been going on since I was in Israel. And even when I was at my son, it's like every time I shower, I happen to have the cold water come before that hot water comes out the tap. And then I have to sit there and say, thank you, Father, for this cold water right now. And I'm cringing and I'm saying, whoa! This water's cold, but I say, thank you, Father, that this cold water is good for my body because it's getting rid of inflammation that might be there. Because when people have inflammation, that cold, if you go, do you know how when people go into that, they sometimes throw themselves in that ice water? That ice water will kill every bit of inflammation that is there. And so, I cringe, but I say, thank you, Father, that if there's any inflammation in my body, may you get rid of it in this time that I've got to sit in this cold water, even though my body doesn't want it. And that's why I'm saying we need to thank Him for the little things in our lives. But you see, sometimes we are so ungrateful human beings that we start to complain about what He's not doing, but we can't even thank Him for what He is doing. So we will be like that, because when the time comes, believe me, the time is coming now where you are going to start seeing the difference between those who are truly of the Father's camp and those who are not. You are truly going to see it. I'm already seeing it now. I'm seeing it. And I'm hearing it. And for those who didn't go through things, they're going to start going through things now, because they're going to have to learn to trust in Abba Yahuwah. If we have not gone through things in our lives, believe me, those tests and those trials are now going to have to come for you to have to learn what it means to trust Him. Blessed is the man who trusts in Yahuwah and whose trust is in Yahuwah. For he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spreads out its roots by the river, and does not see when heat comes, and his leaf shall be green, and in the year of drought he is not anxious. Okay, did you hear that? In the year of drought. So what is going to come? We are going to go through the lack of food. We're going to go through the drought. We're going to go through the lack of food. We're going to have the pale horse is going to come with the pestilence, and is going to bring death, and is going to bring famine. But listen to what he says. For he shall be like a tree planted by the water, which spreads out its roots by the river, and does not see when heat comes, and his leaves shall be green, and in the year of the drought, and you can put in the year of the famine, he is not anxious, nor does he cease from yielding fruit. So you see, even when the destruction comes, we will yield the good fruit. The fruit that's going to be the love, the joy, the peace, the patience, the goodness, the faithfulness, the kindness, the self-control. But we will also yield the fruit of being there to help the others when they are in time of need and destruction. We might even have the food to give to others from our supply that we will have had, that the Father will give us. And now look at verse 9. The heart is crooked above all and desperately sick. Who shall know it? So do you see why we need to start to pray and say, Father, reveal what's in my heart? I, Yahuwah, search the heart. I try the kidneys, and I give every man according to his ways, and according to the fruit of his deeds. So do you see? Whatever you sow, and according to his ways, because the heart, I search the heart. So the heart, the mind, the will, the emotions, the heart, which is going to be the lev, which is made up of the inner man. So I search the inner man, I search the mind, I search the will, I search those emotions, your passions, I search your intellect, I search your conscience, I search what you reflect on. Do you reflect on all those things that you don't have? Do you reflect on the things that is making you upset and angry? Do you reflect on what people are saying about you? Do you reflect on the things that people think about you? Or do you reflect on what the Father thinks about you? Because He searches that heart. He searches your inner man. He searches your mind, your will, your emotions. He searches, is your will laid out for Him, or is your will laid out for you to do your own thing? Is your will for His purposes and His plans, or is your will about your own little life and your own little, your comforts and your building your kingdom? Or is your will for yourself? Selfishness in our hearts. He says, I, Yahuwah, search the heart. I try the kidneys, and I give to every man according to his ways. So you see, if the ways that we're living is the fact that we are not living well in terms of the truth of the Father's ways, then what do you think is going to happen? We're going to be sick in our body. As a parched and broods but does not hatch, so he is who gets riches, but not by right. It leaves him in the midst of his days, and at his end he is a fool. So you see, now he's comparing it with the riches, because there's many people acquiring the wealth of the world. Remember that He wants us sometimes to be humble, but we want to acquire the wealth of the world. And the more, you cannot serve two gods. You cannot serve the God of Mammon and the God and Abba Yahuwah at the same time. You cannot do that. So let's look at Jeremiah 7. Let's look at Jeremiah 7 verses 23 to 24. We're going to stay a little bit now. We're just going to read we're going to finish off with a few scriptures here just in Jeremiah. Jeremiah 7. Okay, listen to what he says. But this word I did command them. But this word I did command them, saying, obey my voice, and I shall be your Lua, and you shall be my people, and walk in all the ways that I have commanded you, so that it be well with you. So are you going to prosper? You're going to be in health? Just like we read. Remember we read, beloved, I wish above all things that you should prosper and be in health. Health is doing the truth of His word. That's health. Doing the truth of His word. Not being mixed seed. Not being in error. But doing what His word tells you to do. So now look what He says. And walk in all the ways that I have commanded you, so that it be well with you. But they did not obey and incline their ear, but walked in the counsel, in the stubbornness of their evil heart, and went backwards and not forwards. So do you see? If we walk in the stubbornness and the evil of our own way and our own flesh, so if I say, no, you know what, I don't want to do this. And if the Father starts to deal with you, and the Father starts to tell you, listen, you need to do this, because this is what I require. And I want you to understand, I want you to hear me clearly here today. I am not just talking to you about this written word. I'm talking to you about the spoken word of the Father to you. That is why we need to have time with Him to say, Father, show me what is in my life that's not pleasing to you. Show me what is there that is not according to your word, according to your ways, so that I may know. And maybe it's not just going to be what this word's going to say. Maybe it's going to turn around and say to you, well, you know what? I'm actually not pleased with maybe the way you dress. Maybe I'm not pleased in what you say there. Maybe I'm not pleased in the attitude that you have, in the fact that maybe you still need to deal with the fact that maybe persecution comes your way, and there's people that persecute you, and you go into anger about that, and you go into withdrawing yourself because now you're going into this area. Do you understand? I'm talking about not just... You see, we've got to get past this of understanding. Remember when Yeshua spoke to the woman at the well, and He says, my Father is looking for true worshippers, those who worship Him in spirit and in truth. John chapter 4 talks about, let's go there quickly, because I can't just speak it without us going there. Because Father's looking for true worshippers, which means there must be false worshippers, which we're going to see now. There's going to be those that worship Him with His lips, but their hearts are far from Him. So, John chapter 4, and He says, listen to what He says. Verse 21, John chapter 4, verse 21. Yeshua said to the woman, said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because the deliverance is of the Yehudim. Deliverance comes through the Yehudim, because they gave us the truth of Torah, and we need to return back to truth of Torah. But listen to what He says. But the hour is coming, and now is when true worshippers, underline true worshippers, shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So why does He say true worshippers? Why didn't He just say worshippers? Because there's many people worshipping the Father, but do they worship Him in truth? True worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Meaning, spirit, meaning the spoken word of the Father to you. Meaning truth, the truth of this word. So you got the Jews that will worship the Father in truth of the word, but then they don't hear His voice. Then you've got a bunch of Christians. They know how to worship Him with the Spirit, because they hear His voice and they'll do what He tells them to do. But then they don't worship, they don't obey the truth of this word. But He's looking for true worshippers. So He's got many that are worshipping. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. And we have our worship services and we'll be there for 5 hours. But at the end of the day, I get up there, I shake and shiver like a leaf. And I'll get out of there and I don't follow this word. So where's the truth in me? Do you see? Now listen. For the Father also does seek such to worship Him. Because the true worship is the worship that's going to be offered Him on the altar of incense. And that altar of incense is a coal of fire that comes from outside the brazen altar. Which means you need to have died to your flesh and brought that coal of fire that's going to be offered on an altar of incense before you can enter into the Holy of Holies. Because that coal of fire has got to come from where? The coal of fire comes from the brazen altar. And that brazen altar is when you got to offer a sacrifice. And who's the person that's going to be offered on the altar of sacrifice is you. Because now we're not offering Him any animals. So the sacrifice of our worship, the highest form of worship that we can offer the Father is obedience. Highest form of worship, obedience. And so that is why He's looking for true worshippers that are going to obey Him to His spoken word. He says, Yahuwah, Eloah, is spirit. And those who worship Him in spirit and in truth. So it doesn't help you to be a bunch of Christians that are worshipping Him, that they hear His Spirit speak to them, and they do what the Spirit says. That's why they can all prophesy and they can all speak in tongues and they can all do these things. But are they walking in the truth of His word? No, because they will still continue to eat their pork and to continue to do things that's not pleasing to Him. They will do Sunday church. They will not keep His feast. They will not keep His Sabbath. They will not do the things that the Torah tells you to do. And then you've got a bunch of Jews that know how to be able to keep these things. But then are they then obedient? Are they obedient to Him? No. Do they hear His voice? No. So they don't follow His voice because they don't hear His voice. So let us look now at Jeremiah 16 verses 12. Jeremiah 16 verse 12 says, and you have done more evil than your fathers, for look, each one works according to his stubbornness of his own evil heart without listening to me. So do we walk according to the stubbornness of our own heart, Or do we walk according to listening to Him? Why are we a sheep that needs to hear His voice? Why did Carol tell us this morning that we need to be able to come to a place of where we can start to be still and hear His voice? Because at the end of the day, if we don't come to a place of being still and starting to hear His voice, we could be rebelling against Him and we don't even know. We could be walking in a way that's not pleasing to Him and we don't know. So that is why we need to learn to be able to come and sit before Him and say to Him, Father, reveal to me what are the things that are there that I'm not doing that's maybe I'm doing things that I think is pleasing to You, but maybe it's not pleasing to You. And we need to hear. And we need to obey. Let's look at Jeremiah 18 verses 12 to 15. Okay, but they shall say, it is no use, for we walk according to our own plans, and we do each one the stubbornness of his evil heart. So, okay, let's look at verse 11. And now speak to the men of Yehudah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, saying, thus says Yahuwah, see, I am forming evil and devising a plan against you. Return now every one from his evil way and make your ways and your deeds good. So, we are to return back to the Father's way and make our deeds good. But they shall say, it is no use, for we walk according to our plan, our own plans, and we do each one the stubbornness of his evil heart. Therefore, thus says Yahuwah, ask now among the nations, who has heard the like of this? The maiden of Israel has done what is most horrible. Does the snow of Lebanon cease from the rock of the field, or the cool flowing waters from afar dry up? But my people have forgotten me. They have burnt incense to what is false. They have stumbled from their ways, from the ancient paths, to walk in the byways and not on a highway. You see? I had to go on a highway. I couldn't go my own way in the dream. I could have gone into that sea and swam to the other side. But why must I do that? How do I know the dangers lurking in that sea? There could have been sharks. There could have been fish. There could have been whatever. There could have been a heck of a storm. That could have, waves could have come. The current could have turned. I had to go on the way that was supposed to be there. There is a highway. But you see, we have forgotten the Father. We have offered incense to, we have burnt incense to what is false. So we have served what is false. False religions we have served. And now he says it's time to come back to the truth. So at the end of the day, I think I'm going to finish here today because next week we can go deeper into looking into this. No, I'm going to finish off with Jeremiah 23. Let's finish off with Jeremiah 23 verses 17. Okay, let's look at verses 16. Thus says Yahuwah of hosts, do not listen to the words of the prophets who prophesy to you. They lead you astray. So you see, a lot of the times, it's been the words that has come from the prophets, or if it comes from these teachers and preachers and rabbis and whatever it is. Do not listen to the words of the prophesiers who prophesy to you. They lead you astray. They speak visions of their own heart, not from the mouth of Yahuwah. They keep on saying to those who despise me, Yahuwah said, you shall have peace. And to all who walk according to the stubbornness of their own heart, they say, no evil comes upon you. Now, I need you to look at this, because at the end of the day, This is exactly what is going on today. All these false prophets, these false preachers, they say to you, you can walk according to the stubbornness of your own heart, do whatever you like, your heart is in error, your mind, your will and your emotions do your own way, you've got mixed seed in you, but you are going to be blessed, you're going to have peace, you're going to have nothing that's going to befall you. That is a lie, because that's what this word has said. This is what these false prophets have spoken. They've spoken it from the time that it was the book of Jeremiah. Those prophets, remember, Jeremiah came up, the false prophets. The false prophets were saying to him, no, you don't need to worry about anything. Peace, peace. You know what? Peace. We're not going to go into exile. Nothing's going to happen to us. These false prophets are saying, no, we are going to be raptured out of here. You're not going to go through anything, but you don't even walk according to his ways. You don't even have a pure heart before him. Your heart has got to be your mind, your will and your emotions that needs to be lined up with him and his ways fully. But yet you are going to be okay and everything's going to be fine. Hello, they didn't even enter into the ark. He didn't take them into the ark. But now, we are going to all just be raptured out of here and nothing's going to befall us and nothing's going to happen to us. But we don't even walk according to the Father's way. Imagine the church. I'm just putting it out there. Now take Christians, for example, who truly believe this. They don't even walk according to others' ways. And now they all think they're going to be raptured out of here. Now imagine when that doesn't happen. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? What is he saying? They keep on saying to those who despise me, Yahuwah has said to you, Yahuwah has said, you shall have peace. And to all who walk according to the stubbornness of their own heart, they say, no evil comes upon you. For who has stood in the counsel of Yahuwah and has seen and heard his word? Who has listened to his word and obeyed it? See, a storm of Yahuwah shall go forth in a rage and a whirling storm. It whirls on the head of the wrong. The displeasure of Yahuwah shall not turn back until he has done and established the purposes of his heart. In the latter days, you shall understand it perfectly. This is what the prophetic word is for now. The displeasure of Yahuwah shall not turn back until he has done and established the purposes of his heart. In the latter days, that's what we're living in now, you shall understand it perfectly. What does he say? I did not send these prophets, yet they run. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. But if they had stood in my counsel, then they would have let my people hear my words, and they would have turned them from their evil way and from the evil of their deeds. So if I am going to be a prophet of the Father, I have to make sure that I have to speak to you about your evil deeds. I have to speak to you about your evil ways. I have to speak to you about your evil heart. And I have to tell you, your mind, your will and your emotions will be evil. And you ought to be able to bring them back in line with the Father. And if we are not exposing that, then what am I saying? What am I going to help you with then? Then when the destruction happens, your blood is on my hands. I will not have that. So, Abba, Father, I just want to bring this before you, and I want to thank you for this word. And as we are going deeper in your word to understand that our hearts, which is our mind, our will and our emotions, need to be lined up with you, Father, I pray that you teach us what it means to truly go deeper with you. Teach us what it means to be those who are going to be submitted and surrendered to your ways and to your purposes and to your plans, so that we may be able to be those that have a heart that is pure before you. Father, I thank you that you are teaching us what it means to be a people that need to be able to hear your voice, so that a voice of a stranger we shall not follow. Father, teach us to be able to be those that do not put our trust in the flesh and in the arm of the flesh, but that we are those that will be able to be like a tree planted by the water, that will be able to bear fruit and to give fruit to those that are going to need it in these last days. Father, I pray, teach us what it truly means to be able to have a heart that will hunger and thirst for righteousness. Teach us to be able to be like Noah in our day, that it may be said of us that we were righteous, that we were perfect in our generation, and that we walked with you. Father, may we be that remnant that is going to be able to walk on that highway of holiness, that we will look at next week. What does it mean to walk on a highway of holiness? What does it mean to walk in a set-apart path? What does it mean to be able to bear fruit for you? so that we can look at the fruit that we should bear, so that we can start looking at the fruit that is not the right fruit and start to cultivate fruit in our lives. I pray, Father, send your fire. Send the fire of your Ruach HaKodesh to purge out of us everything that is not of you. Father, teach us what it means to be those that can say, send your fire, Abba Yahuwah, to be able to purge, to be able to consume, that we will not be burnt, but that you will come and remove from us that which is not of you. And so I thank you, Father, that we can commit the rest of this week to you, Father, allowing you to continue to teach us and lead us and guide us in your ways that you have to be able to walk, so that we can be those people that can eat from the tree of life. In Yahushua's name we pray this. Amen.